Gentlemen,
Here.
and Chair Romano,
Here,
you have a quorum.
okay. Everybody has had a moment to look at the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve, Madam Chair. Second.
Second, moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, has everybody had an opportunity to take a look at the previous meetings from the meeting of June 5?
Move to approve the minutes with or without correction.
Thank you. Second, anyone?
Second.
Okay, any corrections? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Nothing. Wow. All right, old business. So we're gonna. You would think after 6 years we would get this right. Discussion with old business item number 2. Discussion with the city manager regarding the long-term replacement of City Hall. Do you want us to wait for him?
Yes.
And we'll, all right, we'll go to the second item. The FY 2024 CIP budget. Okay. So the reason this is in September is when the commission actually holds the hearings on the budget. So I asked them to send you a link to the proposed budget, which I believe, I hope everybody got. And had an opportunity to take a look at the proposed budget for 2024. I know I did, and I had some concerns. Did anybody else have any? Yes, okay, let's start with Mr. Walters.
Okay, I want to ask staff, when we talk about CIP and we talk about the new city hall. And the new city hall was originally, I think, scheduled to go over a couple of years. Now, we no longer have the opportunity. So where will the money come from?
It's probably best to say that with the city manager, but I'm sure that when we look at financing of a city hall, which is $100 million plus or minus, I think that will be a bond, a general obligation to have a bond.
That coming through the committee or not?
I defer to the city manager, get here to talk about funding that.
City manager.
He's coming, wait a minute.
I think you would look at, well, we have the P3 option, plus also the way that they did the police station, the way they funded that. That's probably going to follow one of those two models.
How much, I believe that in the actual capital budget, there is a, I think they call it a placeholder line for the amount of money that we're gonna be spending on the rent for the new place for a couple of years. Is that, did I read that correctly?
Yes, and I did not bring the whole CIP package. They did have money in there for the interim facility.
But that's not in the CIP budget, that's in the regular capital budget. Can't use CIP money for that.
Well,
Yes.
you can move, if it's general funds, so you can move back and forth between. CIP is just a subcategory of general funding. A lot of it is operational expenditures, but.
I meant enterprise. You can't use any enterprise funds. I didn't mean CIP, I meant enterprise.
You can, in the old city hall, enterprise funds will pay rent for the space that's in there. So,
Enterprise,
yeah, water and sewer funds, stormwater funds actually pay rent for the space that they use.
oh, sure, because that's where you collect the money, you pay the bills and all of that.
Right, so if
Okay.
in the new city halls, once they figure out the space allocation
Uh-huh.
and what, using any enterprise fund people that are working in there, we would pay rent for them to be.
Yes, James?
There was a line item on the very first page, actually, it said city hall replacement, 4,033,000. What was that? Is that the rent payment for 2024? That's right, right about here. First page.
Okay,
City hall replacement, 1,033,000.
That's not one of our projects, I think city manager wants to inserted that associated with the interim facility. So, or it may be. For doing planning and
Plus, and I looked up and I saw there was a whole lot of money allocated in the 24 budget for very important projects, very big ticket items, which was certainly not gonna get built in 2024. And I was wondering why we booked them in 2024.
Redeem what's this?
Yeah, there were a couple of the redoing of some of the main sewer lines. The big
Oh,
big
okay.
sewer line, which obviously is not gonna get done next year.
In order to award the contract in this year, we have to have the complete amount available. So, the affluent enforcement coming from GTO
That's the one.
is a $30 to $40 million project that we had just solicited. When we award the contract, we will have to encumber the entire funds at that time, even though we won't spend them for a year or two, maybe for.
Okay,
But we have to have all the funds in place before they'll allow us to work.
I got it. All right. Good to see.
How did you handle change order?
We always have a little contingency that within any projects, and if for some reason we need more than what we have allocated here, then we have to go through the budget amendment process and go to the committee and have them allocate more money towards a specific project before we can award the change order.
No, being puzzled by the fact that we don't have enough money now. And we're getting these things that unforeseen, that is costing additional money. And you know, and you talk about bonding for City Hall, we bonding for Park and Rec, we bonding for sewer. And then what really disappointed me was the downgrading of financial status. How do we, where do we find the money if we don't have enough now to pay for anything that is an issue?
Well, within, and I'll talk specifically in an enterprise fund, water and sewer,
Right.
but they all kind of, what we have is every single project, we have a cost estimate, what we think it will cost to build it. And then we add in the project, a certain amount of contingency based on the type of project and other fees for project management fees or other things, come up with the total budget cost. And that's what's reflected in the CIP, and we balance against what we think our total income will be for operational and CIP. Now, as we're doing that, we retain a certain number of days of funds within the reserves for any budget. So in water, so I believe we keep about 120 days reserve of funds that are within the budget, but are not allocated in any specific project, so that if we need to, if we have an emergency need, we can tap into those reserves to cover them. Plus also, even though we've allocate $40 million budget, it's just waiting to be spent. So if we have a real emergency, we have the ability that we can shift money between projects as well. So there's a lot of money in the checking account. Most of it is allocated to different projects, some allocated to reserves. And that's how we manage it, that we have a little flexibility. Money-wise. Now, the way you get more is we increase the rates. We say, and we're already increasing the rates a lot.
I
So
know.
we don't want to have a huge increase for money that's just sitting there without a purpose. That's why I think that the reserves that we have, plus having a good cost estimate and prioritizing within the budget what we're allocating funds to, is probably a plus.
And if you put aside City Hall, which is a recent unexpected massive
Yes,
expense, obviously from the CIP perspective, we got the water sewer bonds, we got the stormwater bonds, and so forth. Those every roughly 5 years, the 200 million that we're getting every 5 years roughly for a limited period of time is already baked into the current rate structures that are either in the code or currently in place where the rates go up a certain amount every year. So our budget, for lack of better terms, is not only built for the 60 million a year we spend on CIP, but also the water, sewer, and stormwater bonds. City Hall throws a wrench in the situation, but that's how we are getting the bond that we're currently getting every 5 years.
Good to know. Yes, James.
So Alan, regarding your explanation about covering a total amount. There are a couple items here on the Lamar wastewater treatment plant. P 12176 and P 12800. One is treatment plant motor controls, and there's 6 million for 24, then nothing in 25, and then 7,000,003 for 26, and then another 7,003. I guess that's 27. The column is not marked. And then you go down below, and then it's wastewater treatment plant reactor rehab. 3 million in 24, 1.27 in 25, and 3 million to 2026. So those are spread out. I'm not understanding how that.
So the reactor rehab projects as well as the MCC type projects, you can take down certain portions of the plant in order to do a large portion of the work. So those projects tend to be phased. You can usually put them out to bid as phased, or you use annual contracts where you know you're going to execute large task orders in chunks.
Okay, so these were chunked out. Is that what you're?
That would be the main reason why you would see a project split out with large chunks of money separated so far.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the only other time we really split money typically is we'll do design one fiscal year because it takes a long time to design, and then we'll do the construction another fiscal year because we don't want to have all the money just sitting in one pocket for
Right.
years.
Okay.
You couldn't do all at the same time when the plant will be shut down, like you said, so it's spaced out in different years.
Okay.
But it's a big chunk of money when you look across the
Huge.
whole, just the treatment plant motor control going out to the, you know, what that project is gonna cost is $21 million.
Yeah, it's replacing all the major NCCs, and it's a lot of equipment around that time, yeah.
And that's only one piece. It's
No, it's the small,
costing us a lot of
Oh,
money
yeah.
to keep that plant
right,
optimally running.
It does, but Justin Murray is the management runs the plant. He has the renewal and replacement plan, the plant going up for many years. And I think if you were to look back at how much we're investing in it now to maintain it, it's gone up probably 2 to 3 times from what we were doing a few years back.
Yeah, but a few years back, we were not paying as much attention as we are now.
So he's catching up on
Uh-huh.
deferred maintenance, and he is trying to really get it into a top rate condition so that we don't have any going forward.
And put risk on that one. All right.
And are we looking at lifespan on that wastewater treatment plant? Are we looking at the potential end of lives for that?
Right now, I don't think we're anywhere close to needing to replace it. If anything, though, as we look at a long-term plan, definitely looking at the capacity of the plant, because it does have physical capacity issues, and making sure that if we are gonna need to do either, pretty hard to almost impossible to expand it right there, but maybe at some point in time, building a second plant might be necessary. That's part of the real long-term planning for the wastewater program.
Right.
But
Let's
condition
not-
wise, it's
Let's not forget about it.
right.
It's at the top.
I don't want to get stuck with the water treatment and you gotta make a decision in 1 year or else, you know, that's, we don't want that.
Right,
No,
right,
okay.
right. We've been paying a lot of attention because we're concerned about the capacity issues,
Okay,
but also, like I said, in this case, we're doing a lot of maintenance type activity
Right,
in there.
I think it's
to keep it in
great,
shape.
yeah.
And there's no concerns about it needing to be mothballed and replaced. So,
And Ralph has a question, but before I lose my train of thought, can I ask him a question on that?
absolutely.
How's it going with the cleaning program for the filters to increase the capacity so that we have fewer discharges into the intercoastal?
As far as the deep injection well cleaning program goes, I don't remember how many wells are planned already in the current budget to be cleaned in this next fiscal year, but we are working, as we've said before, to clean them on a 2.5 year plus minus
Right.
cycle as opposed to a 5 year cycle.
right, you
So we are-
accelerated that.
Yeah, so we are planning that. That wouldn't be seen as much in the CIP as it would be a combination of CIP and also operating.
Great.
There is 3.2 million in the FY24 column for that specific.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that'd be
Good.
the first step to jumping on that now.
Excellent. Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Wait a minute, Ralph.
Oh, sorry.
And then you.
Speaking of
deep injection wells. What's the situation or what's the plan regarding Field Dixie? That you have one deep well injection, but the regulatory agencies requiring two, one for backup, just like they did for the relocated 5-ad for the prospect of Wellfield site. Is there anything should the existing 3,000 foot deep well injection at Field Dixie fail? Do you have another plan, or are you in the works of trying to come up with something so you don't have to shut it down?
Right now, the plan is for Field Dixie, because of the volume that it produces. It's, if there's an issue with it, they shut it down, we pick up the extra capacity at time action.
Okay.
That's the way it's operating.
Okay, I just didn't want something that somebody pull a rug and say, oh my gosh, you got to scramble. It's only like 5 million or 6 million. something like that.
Pee Wee is up and running again, isn't it?
Is it back up? I know they took it down.
They took it down for maintenance. I got an email.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure yet. But there is future expansion on the well field for that plant. And in that field, they were gonna put a disposal well.
Okay,
It's part of the.
that's too, just to the west.
Way,
Okay, gotcha.
Mike, you had a question?
Yeah, as it, I think, Chris, maybe you can answer this best. As it relates to the discharge events that we have at Lohmeyer, it seems that those only happen on, on heavy rain events, right? Is that just a factor of infiltration of freshwater, rainwater into the sewer system?
Yeah, the majority of it would be definitely because of that, because if you look at the overall year's flow, average flow every day, and you see the days that we go over, say, 50 million, those are usually related to high rain events. And when we're hitting 90 plus, when it's actually having to say use the emergency outfall, those are during our 8, 9, 10-inch rainstorms or our 3 inches in like 1 hour heavy events.
And how's the rain getting into the system?
I. So whether it be through manhole lids in the roads, because the roads are flooding, which that's a lot,
Okay.
or actual I issues with piping infrastructure itself, which we brought up before, and it is in our plan we've been spending roughly 20-25 million over the last 5 years. We're going to be doing about 100-120 over the next 5. So we're accelerating 4 to 5 fold what we've been spending, and those projects are actually finally starting to kick off now that we've got some contracts in place.
Thanks.
And we also, by the way, are working more closely, if you will. It's just the beginnings of it, but we're working more closely with Oakland Park as well as Wilton Manors. But Oakland Park seems to be one of our biggest I&I contributors from the large users. So we're working with them to make sure that they have their own programs in place where they're being more aggressive.
Before we get, how do you do that?
So one way is we have our quarterly large user, each city has a basically every quarter. And we discuss first and foremost what we're doing as the provider to make sure our system can handle everything. And then from there, we get input from them. And basically it's, for lack of better terms, more of a professional agreement and understanding that they know they're going near or over their allotted capacities, and we're monitoring it. So we're expecting less teeth in our contracts with them to outside of point of court. We do have rules in there that they are forced to monitor their I&I and actually aggressively address it. Unlike Dade County, we don't really have anything in our rules right now that forces each city to have an I&I program if they're going on. I don't have the numbers, but they are known to have I&I problems. But we could end up with that here in the county of Broward, and everybody's well aware of that. And it's really more of a professional agreement that each of the cities, we're all coming to the table for the same reason, to make sure that the plant has capacity for their use as well as ours.
So have they put anything in their most recent budget to address it, or it's very nice gentlemen and ladies agreements, but when do we see some action?
So we haven't gotten any copies of their actual CIPs, kind of like what you have with ours here yet. But it is all part of our conversation where we're very well aware of what Wilton Manors is doing, because they've given us insights as to how much budget they've spent, or they've allocated for the next 5 years. They actually have an I&I program that is clearly budgeted. But again, they're at a decimal of 1 million gallons as opposed to 4 to 5 million gallons like Oakland. So we're working with Oakland and the other cities to do the same thing. Open your books and show us what is it you're providing. And they've agreed to do that. But do I have it in front of me right now? No, there's been a recent conversation.
Okay, yes,
Speaking of Wilton Manors, some time back, I had pointed out that I had observed and I had prior to that, she told me that the Wilton Manors were opening up their sanctuary cleanouts close to the property line, right of way line. And for a means of disposal of storm sewer. So I hope that's in the discussion with them, I include Wilton Manors as well, as far as that's not an acceptable practice.
So in the 3-quarter meetings that I've only sat through, that exact topic has not come up, but we're all very well aware that that's illegal. So I can make a mental note of it to bring it up just for a point of bringing it up.
okay. So,
Yeah, I had never heard of I&I until I got on this committee. And then it took me another 2 years to even figure out what the hell it was. And now because of this gentleman sitting over here, I'm coming along. And I'm constantly told that we got an I&I problem with our system. The work that we're doing, you said we're gonna increase about 5-fold over the last 5 years, to the next 5 years. At that time, would our I&I problem be diminishing or eradicated?
It won't be eradicated, and honestly, you never will have eradication. Most cities that have a robust I&I program are roughly, I would say, 80% of the city is being covered over a certain period of time. You're always going to have cracks in your pipes. You're always going to have joints that are slightly offset with water coming in. You're always going to have manhole lids with standing water on top of them, which number one, is how much will 110, 20 million get us in the next 5 years? I mean, you'd have to run models to even guess at that answer, but based on what we've seen reduced at individual pump stations in the basins that we've lined over the last 5 years, and recognizing that that hasn't shown up at all at the plant. The pump stations themselves are recognizing 2, 3, 4, 5 hours less of pump run time at a station. But you're still once you line one station, well, that water on the surfaces or in the ground is going to go to the next crack, which is the next basin and the next basin. So long story short, each basin is improving, but we have to get that from point A to point Z taken care of. So the more we do, the less that gets in the system. Sooner or later, you have that trickle down effect on your way to the actual treatment plant where it will reduce. We're estimating that we will finally have some sort of measurable reduction after we spend over 100 million. What will that number be? I can't even begin to guess and give you a fake number right now.
Yeah, I guess one thing, if I may add to what's out there, is the fact is that continue II with the sand getting into the system goes just going right through hundreds of millions of dollars of force mains that were put in and grinding away, accelerating that deterioration. So that should be a kind of a carrot out there for trying to get the most damaged II systems out of the, corrected as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we're using a lot of information between pump run times as well as change in run times when there are heavy rain events. In order to determine which stations have the highest expected I&I issues, and we're addressing them now with more of a go to the basin that seems to be the worst, inspect it all and start lining almost all of it.
Excellent.
In the process of doing that over the next, let's say, year or two, maybe, we're also getting ready to kick off. I might actually be on the street advertising already. I&I program management program, where we're looking to have somebody come in, work with us to develop a program to approach this from a more reasonable perspective, as opposed to, this pump's running all the time, let's line the basin. There's gonna be smoke testing, there's gonna be TVing, there's gonna be late night during low flow times, going out, plugging an end of a pipe and watching the type of flow that's coming out. If it cycles, that means it's just flushing. If it's constant flow, that means it's I&I. And it's a faster, slightly cheaper way to investigate where the I&I is coming from. Then you can prioritize your basins from there. And you take chunks out of your prioritization to create a plan. So they're gonna help us go through all that planning, through all of our basins, all 186 pump stations and basins. And then from there, develop a program based on our annual budgets that we expect to have every year that we can focus on I&I with. And then they will work with us to prioritize in the best way to spend our money to get the most bang for your buck in terms of reduced I&I flows.
Is that a consultant's contract?
Yes,
And is it out on the street already?
it is in the bidding advertising period right now.
And how much are we spending on that? And who are we gonna get? Is it another Hazen and Sawyer job, or we don't know yet?
So we don't really know. I do know of 2 to 3 different firms that do this kind of work. Hazel's not one of them.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we've earmarked between 20 and 25 million for this program because they're gonna be doing everything from not only going out inspecting and prioritizing, as well as coming up with repair plans as to what you should do, whether it's replace line or leave it.
Okay,
But they're also gonna augment our project management staff with project management of the contracts that we give the contractors, as well as helping us with augmenting our inspection for the CEI services. So it's a very large, comprehensive program, management program. And if you take between 100 and 120 million over 5 plus or minus years, we estimated 20 plus or minus million to do everything from planning, design. It's very
Yeah,
small design
that's- I
element
know,
to
but-
CEI services. That's how we roughly estimated 20 million.
okay, well, that's good. I'm delighted to hear that. I wasn't aware. Yes.
So Chris, I understand cracks and joints and, we're always gonna have those. Talk about water in the street going through the manhole cover. Dr. Gassman walked in just in time. What about our stormwater management program? Do you anticipate seeing a reduction in I&I as that makes improvements and manages the stormwater runoff that we're seeing so much of it?
You'll certainly get a reduction in the basins where it's the standing water going into the manhole lids, which in our 5-6 neighborhoods that we know are extreme flooders, that's going to make a huge difference in those basins, no doubt. But you're still going to have the high groundwater tables, which are rising with the ocean, which will always be an I&I problem in the ground because the water on top is only when it rains. The water in the ground is every
All
single
the
day.
time, Okay.
Okay, I have a question on P12765, which is the new water treatment plant. And we have someone here who can tell us about it. Would you like to introduce yourself? This is our new best friend now.
Hi, Daniel Fisher, Senior Project Manager with Public Works.
What's your name?
Daniel Fisher.
Daniel Fish.
Okay. Project manager for the Prospect Water Plant, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what is the $8 million for?
That was for Hazen and Sawyer's.
Since 2023, there's nothing in 2024.
Correct.
Okay.
That was, we awarded that task order a few months ago. So that's
So they're on board for $8 million. And what are they gonna do for our $8 million?
anything and everything we asked.
I like that.
So they've been involved for the past year now, helping us negotiate the contract. And then since then, they've been on board helping guide our project company into really moving this thing forward.
So what's their prognosis? Are we on schedule, or actually it's your prognosis? They give you they feed you the information and you're the person who tells us all how we doing. So how are we doing?
So far, well, we're still very early into it. You guys know, contract was awarded February 7th. It took about a month, 5 weeks to get all the contract the contract signed, the bonds and the insurance issued. So the clock for project company started March 16th.
March 16 of
Yeah.
2023.
So they have 42 months to start producing. So that puts them giving us water September 2026.
Okay.
So currently, right now, what they're mainly focused on is developing the design enough to start permitting. And one of the first permits that they submitted for a few months ago was the deep well permits. So those went into the EP in May. So those are the ones right now. The other big one that we're going in for is our surface water permit with the county, is they won't be able to start any sort of clearing and rubbing or any other foundations until that's issued. that went in Friday and we're going to TRC, which is the city building department. For site plan review, and August.
Okay, that's very good. That's good. All right, any questions on the progress of our water treatment plant? We all got our notices that our water rates are going up 14%.
Yeah.
Okay. Just an FYI, at our last meeting, we looked at the 3 scenarios for the financing. And we all sort of gravitated around option 3. They didn't take option 3. They took another option. Can anybody remember what the option was?
Option
They-
one.
Option one. All at once, option 1 all at once. All right.
It hits you harder now, but it ends up being softer later on, so basically, pull the Band-Aid, get it over with now. Very loosely summarizing, but
They looked at the total amount at the end of the
Yeah.
project and it was $100 million less or something like that. So they said, just bite the bullet and do it.
Okay, well,
That was
so
the
we're working
discussion.
on that. We're working good on that. So we got money for you. The other tranche of money that I'm worried about is the enabling works. Okay, so where, where in the budget, in the CIP, is the beginning of the enabling works?
They are going out for bonds in, I believe, October,
Mhm.
which will cover both the, our share of the expense of the plant plus all of the enabling works.
But they're 2 different tranches, right? The
No,
way I read it, it's one big bond?
It will be one big bond.
Wow.
Now, they may not draw all of it at one time. You don't need $600 million sitting in the account right away, so. And Susan can talk smart, she's been working with the finance director on the sequencing of it. But we're really bonding all of it
All-
at part of one effort.
But it doesn't show up in 2024 because you don't have the money yet.
Correct.
All right, so, but didn't you project it into 2025?
No, they did, and it's not
Where is
in here.
Oh.
Right.
yeah,
Oh.
a chunk of projects that were for our future bonds, like the enabling projects, for some reason didn't make it into this. Packet of the plan 27, 20, I mean,
Let me see.
24, 28,
We looked, didn't see it. Okay,
I'm trying to remember what was the number that they're trying to use for that.
For the bond is 575.
575.
Excuse me? 575. Lisa, dollars or the actual?
No,
really,
no, I'm
I'm
saying.
talking about funds,
Fund source,
it's 497.
497.
495.
could I ask you to do us a favor, since I'm
Yes.
really concerned about getting this whole thing, you know, and no delays, absolutely no delays on our part for sure, no delays. So could you just send us pieces that show the projected when that money is gonna start hitting the CIP budget so that we will have money to do what needs to be done? Okay, can you do that? All right, so that was my last treatment on the water, question was on the water treatment plant, and then I have the perennial sidewalk question. You will notice in this budget that there is Zippo money. Zippo for new sidewalks. There's money for fixing sidewalks, yay, all right, not a whole hell of a lot, but money for fixing sidewalks. No money for new sidewalks. Now, we all know that this is not the only source of money for sidewalks, okay? We all know that, you know, complete streets, you get some sidewalks. Surchecks projects that involve streets, you get some sidewalks. We have not committed any money to new sidewalks. Last year, you committed $200,000 for a sidewalk master plan, which I believe is being written as we are speaking. Okay, so we should have a sidewalk master plan and then no money in 2024 for new sidewalks. Inexplicable to me, absolutely inexplicable.
The first funding for new sidewalks.
Where?
Is on the top of the second page, annual sidewalk. Yeah. On the second page,
Second page, and my pages are all messed up.
What
Got a number?
the new 72052,
72025.
and it's got 2.5 million in FY 28.
Oh, that's what I said, there's no
Yes.
money in 2024.
That is it for new sidewalks.
So we have a plan, we have a new master plan, it should be done this year, right? In October, I'm told, we should see the master plan. And we don't have any money until 2020, and I'm yelling at you because people are yelling at me.
I'm disagreeing.
Uh,
We get ask for new sidewalks all the time and.
Okay, but you know, that's our job, to advise on certain issues relative to the funding of infrastructure. We've been following the streets and the sidewalk issue. And we're gonna have a meeting with the city commission, upcoming joint workshop with the city commission. And I know I'm gonna bring this up because I'm hearing this from everybody. Yeah,
When they asked, on the new sidewalks, do they include the ADA ramps?
They have to.
They do.
That's,
We're still trying to get them on Northeast 21st Road. They did some, but then there's some spots in there where they're not, so it's kind of useless to somebody coming down a wheelchair and he's, or she is, then has to go through a driveway or something. Yeah. That's good.
okay, so does anybody else have any more questions on the budget? I'm sure, you know, you might wanna give it another look now that we've had a little discussion, because we have some time before the joint workshop. James?
I had one last question. Federal courthouse parking garage, 1,250,000. What, that's a federal building and we're doing, I don't get that, what's the?
That's a TAM project, not us, but I believe it's still gonna be a city parking garage, but it's just adjacent to where the federal courthouse is gonna be.
Pump station.
Sorry,
No, we're doing a pump station and relocating some piping at the new courthouse. So
right, so whose parking garage is this? The
It's-
federal
it's-
government or the city of Fort
it's-
Lauderdale?
it should be the city of Fort Lauderdale. It's Stamps project.
Oh, it's a TAM project.
Right? I think that was part of the contribution we made to Sweden. We're gonna do the pump station, we're gonna do some of the infrastructure. And we ended up moving the garage, but as long as it's our garage, but I don't know, the federal people are probably gonna rent out a whole bunch of space in it. Unless they have their own garage,
The city, yeah. Was.
right?
That's right.
So when you say it's a city garage, it's gonna be a garage that is gonna be leased by the federal government for their purposes.
The whole
And I don't know, probably not the whole.
But it's revenue.
Yay, right on time. Okay. The city manager,
Hi, how are you?
okay, well, the timing couldn't have been better.
All right.
We just finished our discussion on the no, we didn't, long term. We were holding the long term replacement of City Hall for you, so let's do that.
All right, sure. So good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the lateness. But traffic is just traffic. And I had a bit of meeting with the vice mayor. Nevertheless, thank you for all for being here and for also taking part of this discussion. As you know, we have a need for City Hall. We're in the process of determining the final outcomes for the facility. But we need to determine also a path forward. And so far, what we have is we have a proposal that we've received prior to the play. And in fact, that proposal, if the commission would like to consider, it would also require us to put this out for a competition period so that other proposers can come in and provide also a proposal competitive to that. If the P3 venue or the P3 procurement method is the preferred one for the city commission. Right now, the city commission has many initiatives in the pipeline. And one of those right now as a priority is to make sure that we secure temporary space for the time being. For the what we call the intermediate space between now and when we have a new city hall. That time can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years or even more. But one of the things that will be required is to determine what City Hall will look like. I think one of the ideas was to look at how this board, which is a very critical board, our future paths, can also be a partner in conceptualizing and determining the amenities and the functionalities for City Hall. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the role that perhaps the infrastructure task force can assist administration so that when we discuss City Hall or when proposers come in and provide submittals on City Hall, we can have at least a definition from a philosophical level of what functions and amenities and use City Hall will look like. So let's go to the next slide. I just prepared an outline of what we could talk about. So again, a need to fulfill. There's a gap right now. I think we could use your help and talk a little bit about that. How you could help in defining guiding values and principles, more philosophical. This is not engineering design is more, and also looking at how we can prioritize the space in the City Hall for purposes of civic engagement. And then also what is a potential work plan and next steps. So think about the BAB, right? So every year we work with the BAB, the Budget Advisory Board. Every year we produce a budget. We work hand in hand with the BAB, the Budget Advisory Board, to submit a proposal. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, but at least the BAB serves as a channel for the public to provide that feedback. And currently, at the same time, we provide a budget proposal and we shake hands and we provide that to the City Commission. So right now, we have a need to fulfill, for instance, the guiding principles and develop also a vision for how public place spaces and the future facility will look like. So again, this is not a needs assessment. We've already done that. We have many iterations of that. And this is not a role for you to develop a building site. We have professionals, architects that do that, and planners that do that as well. What we really need is a board, a body, a group that can represent the public, that can help us determine the philosophical depiction of how and where our neighbors will interface in the future. No, let's go back. I'm not ready to go there yet. I'm still here. So what I want to say is that research has shown that one of the most important challenges of the 21st century is understanding and fostering the relationship between neighbors and government. And so what we feel is it's important to understand from the public how is it that we are going to serve City Hall, and also that may entitle us to look at surveys from the public, from business stakeholders, or from even staff. So we're looking at doing conceptualizations and workshops, charrettes that can help us determine this philosophy. And that's the role that we feel the ITF can serve. Let's go to the next slide. So defining the guiding principles. So there have been a lot of questions about, how City Hall is going to work, how it's going to look, how big does it need to be, what functions does it need to have, where should it be? A lot of prevailing questions, which are very good questions. And so ultimately, think about all these questions being funneled down to now some guiding principles that we can use so that we can provide whoever the proposer is. Let's make sure that this facility has these values or these principles instilled within the decisions. There's going to be many decisions that need to take place. So defining the guiding values and principles are going to help our policymakers. It's going to help us as administrative staff determine also what the priorities are and how this new City Hall will look like. And here are just some examples of certain values that have been incorporated in other City Halls. I mean, these are just examples, but you all can, as ITF, can say, you know what, these are the 4 to 6 guiding principles that we feel the new City Hall should have. So again, these are just a listing of some. Let's go to the next slide. And so the other thing too is, as I mentioned, making sure that we foster the relationship between the neighbors and government. And government is very important. So neighbors, they're coming together, and it's important so that we could have connected neighborhoods. So we want to make sure that we have ample space for that we have the resource through technology as we move into, the virtual world. We're now using YouTube to broadcast how do we create technology for the next, all the things that we're doing across the board. The other civic engagement consideration is neighbor to elected officials. How do we create a space that provides the avenues for neighbors to interact with the elected officials in a space and a space that has security and a space that has privacy. And so how do we, facilitate that or define that? And also neighbor to staff, how do we improve the experience of coming to City Hall? How do we attract people to come to City Hall? What amenities, will there be a museum? Will there be other functions for City Hall that will attract people to visit City Hall? So those are just some ideas of what we need definition on. And again, these are some topics. One more topic that comes to mind is the procurement method or the procurement mechanism. Again, the P3 is one, and there's the RFP, and we can certainly look at various variations of that. That can help us understand what will be the procurement method for securing the new City Hall, the contractor, and how that contract would look like. Let's go to the last slide. And so looking at this next steps, I mean, this is just an idea. This is not final. This is just concept. But think about today, we start the discussion. Think about we have a series of workshops, a series of charrettes that we could talk about, maybe deploying principles, maybe another one spacing allocation, maybe another one amenities. And then at the end of all those workshops, we do a playback and say, we've captured all of these. Is that what we feel? Is that what we think? And we bring all that together. And then maybe one last meeting to say, this is now your proposal for the city commission on recommendations on what are the needs on a philosophical level for City Hall. And again, this would follow similar method of how the budget advisory board works hand in hand with administrative staff in order to develop the budget that they weigh in, that also bears influence in how the elected officials make that path, make those strategies available. So those are just some ideas. I thank you for giving me the floor and wanted to spark some conversation.
Well, yes, you may, absolutely.
I guess my concern is I probably was contemplating and reading the proposal for the E3 proposal was it sounded like they were going to demolish the existing City Hall and then from an 8-story to an 18-story.
Yeah, that was a proposal.
That's just a proposal, right?
That's just one, somebody took a stab at it.
And I'm not gonna sit here and try to play the engineer, because you've got people, like you said, about concerned about the foundation, the structure after the water damage and everything, that whether that has to be replaced or some of it can be utilized, probably not, but you know, that's a decision to your folks under contract. So the engineers that will do that. So we're gonna be sort of like monitoring the neighborhoods, if you will, trying to get what they want, what their expectations are, what their needs are. Is that a fair statement?
So, yes, so think about this. Let's say there's a charrette coming on or a visioning session or one of the workshops. Let's say it's to talk about maybe location. Where should it be? There's many philosophies of where it can be. Maybe we could have one workshop on here are the properties that the city owns. In the center, would you like to have a central location? Would you like to have it distributed? And we can invite also other community members that are experts that can also weigh in and chime in onto what's the pros and cons of each. And then maybe that workshop, you talk about, well, you know, we like this and these are why, and this is, you know, and that workshop just define location. So that can help, and you can certainly invite everyone from the public to bring in.
What I've heard from the mayor and some of the other commissioners is that they want to try to keep the consolidated or City Hall that's consolidated with like it is or was before, as opposed to spreading them out around the city limits.
Right.
I guess that interplays with what the citizenry is looking forward to us. And they'll probably be looking at it from a perspective that, gosh, I don't want to go down to a crowded area with everybody else down there with different functions that they're going to. I need to pay my water bill. I'd rather have the water bill place over here, another something here and there, so that it's spread out. So not everybody's in the same line to get it to City Hall.
Can I make an observation before we get into the how-to?
Your chair, you certainly did.
Thank you very much. When we started at the infrastructure task force, we did a series of workshops, one in each district, inquiring people, just we invited anybody who wanted to come. If you had X amount of dollars, how would you spend the money on your infrastructure? And we got some very good feedback. I remember even back then, sidewalks were very big. You know, we thought, oh my God, sewers. No, everybody wanted sidewalks, but we've done that. That is a function that we've undertaken to engage people in these kinds of workshop discussions. And with respect to the water treatment plant, when we were asked by the mayor for a recommendation on whether or not we should do P3, and I'm going back to the original one, not the votes. We spent 6 months talking about the pluses and minuses of the P3s on large infrastructure projects. And we came out with a recommendation that P3 was, could be done through a P3. We didn't say no. We said it's a possibility. It's one way to go. But there were 3 principles that you had to always keep in mind, whichever way you went. You can't lose control of the asset. You can't lose control of the quality. And you can't lose control of the rates. That was were our guiding principles from the very beginning of the whole P3 thing. And every time we were asked for our opinion, we would look at it through that lens. And when we finally got to the end and the lens was clear, then we made a recommendation and it worked for everybody involved. So this is something that we have experience in. And I'm very heartened that you have the confidence to come to us and ask us to do this as well. But I just want to ask you a question, because I'm confused with what I see. And this thing really confused me because this is really not, this is really not what we should be talking about.
Right.
But what we should be talking about is how big a bread box are we talking about? Okay, because the amount of space that you need to determine it, obviously, you're going to do analysis of your staff needs, but it'd be very, it's too open-ended for us to talk about a lot of these issues if we don't know what we're talking about. Okay, so that would be one thing that I would be asking you to sort of give us some parameters, because are we looking at a Lincoln or are we looking at a Honda? So that kind of question. That would be my first reaction to this, that I'm heartened that you're asking this. It's something we can do and we've been done before. And let's try and get a little more hands around what it is. James?
So 3 things. First of all, I agree with Marilyn. Appreciate you coming to us and asking us to participate in this. I think that I appreciate it at least. Comment about the water treatment plant. Our recommendation actually was rejected by the city commission.
First time, yes.
Versus P3 versus
That's correct.
do a bond RFP. But when the P3 can move forward, it did meet our 3 design principles or 3 principles of going forward, and we accepted it, moved forward. I just want to get those out on the table. Greg, on the last slide, that you showed, you brought us to an end. How is this?
Again, this is just taking a stab at it. So again, this right here is something we received that I don't even
want to even talk about.
I don't even think we need to be talking about it. That's why I brought this,
It's a
right?
shame.
Right.
I don't want to talk about
Let's
that.
talk
I want to talk about this, what you're showing.
So this right here can take maybe, for each workshop, let's just say that each workshop, we do 1 workshop a month. This can take up to a year or more. Each workshop will focus on something. Maybe the first workshop should be again, guiding principle, then spacing allocation, we can talk about how big this should be, right?
Uh-huh.
And then also, we could look at, what amenities, I mean, all these are interrelated. But this could take some time.
So do you
If you could
anticipate?
set the parameters, that would be a helpful thing. I'm sorry to jump in on you, but I just wanted.
I would say at least 6 months
It's too ambitious.
to at least 6 months to at most 2 years.
So do you anticipate that there would be some kind of professional facilitator to lead these workshops, or do you have people on staff that can do this kind of, I mean, where do you see that?
So we could certainly hire a planner, we could hire someone that has facilitation experience that could help us gather our thoughts and put them together, like from our minds to discussion to paper, right? Because we all have great ideas, but how do we prioritize those ideas?
Exactly.
And then document that keeps building to find what are the values that at the very end will be given to the commission, so that when they are looking at a proposal, any proposal, that gives the breadth and the understanding of how they're going to weigh in on each proposal. And
That's good to hear. In my career as a consultant, when we did large group facilitation, it's very important to be able to lead the customer through that kind of decision-making process, because people get lost.
yes, absolutely.
So
I
I think that's a great idea if you would follow through with that.
yes.
And the timing, I would think, is at least 6 months to 8 months.
Well, speaking about timing, we end, I think we end in March of next year.
Right, right.
So one of the things we need to talk about is, we need to talk about re-upping the committee, with some people, extending with some people, maybe not all of us, but some, whatever. So that's something that should be on the table at our workshop. And if you want us to do this work, then there needs to be a committee to do it.
Governance, one workshop on governance. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the timeline. Our mission ends in March of next year.
This committee disbands.
We sunset.
No, understood. So if it's the interest of this committee to delve into this work, right? I feel this is infrastructure. And so you can certainly, in your communications, let the commission know that you want to work on this, and this may extend that. You don't know yet. And you don't know yet what that will be, but that you look forward to doing something that can help, just like the other projects that are multi-million-dollar projects. That you have an ability to bring in information from the public and prioritize it for consideration of the commission.
Okay, so we will put that on we're having a discussion on upcoming joint meeting with the commission. We'll put that on, we'll talk about that.
Oh, on August 22nd.
On August 22nd.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yes.
Okay, for those of us who old enough to remember when Charlie the Tuna was a kid, he would go around bragging about he was a fish with good taste. But the fisherman wanted a fish that tastes good. And when we talk about what we want for a city hall, we don't want one to look good. We want one to function good. That's gonna be key. And how we make that happen, and I know there's a lot of debating about, do you have everybody together, or will you allow people to be dispersed throughout the city, depending on their capabilities? It's gonna be good. And are we looking to build a city hall that will be functioning for 2030? Or are we looking for something that will be still very relevant in 2050? That is also going to be important. But when you build for the future, it usually costs you additional dollars, cause you got to catch up with people and experiences as we look at what it is that we need. Now, I don't like P3s, and that's just me. I think it's just another way that people rip government off. And anybody here who got a P3, I'm not talking about you because you're my partner. But I talk about you more when you're not around. RFPs, I've been dealing with for the last 40 years, I guess, and they seem to work better at the end of the bidding process, and we move into construction and all that other stuff. And because we know that we have control over what is happening, whereas with a P3, if somebody said, well, I build you the building and you can live in it free, but everything else is gonna cost you. We somewhat lose the capability of determining what type of or what size of the budget we need to maintain ourselves as we move forward. And what is your, I guess, least vision for cost?
Least vision for us. It's hard to say that. I mean, it's hard to just give you a number.
But that's why you're the manager.
Yeah, but
You don't know if it's gonna include how many offices.
Right.
Or is it gonna be just?
I could give you a very thin one, and I can give you one that's robust. I mean, it all depends on how we are set up. So think about the city of Miami, right? They have a chambers. 10 miles away or 6 miles away, they have a administration building. And then they have for each district, they have a net office.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like a dispersed design, right? There's all centric, like the county, right? The Miami-Dade County, they have one building and they outgrew that after probably around 15 years. They outgrew it and they went out to this, and there's gonna be more outsourcing of things that can give us better cost economy, scale. So there's a lot that I can't give you that. And again, to consider this without having this is not a good sequence. I think you all can weigh in so that when they consider this, it is more, it's a more comprehensive decision. So I will tell you, it will be at least more than $140 million, which is what the police station costs.
But that's okay, especially if we build it for future growth.
Right, so I will venture to say at least more than $200 million, just based on current knowledge. This is very rough order of magnitude.
And I asked staff prior to you getting here about, this is an unforeseen cost upon us. There was always talk about a new city hall, but we was always looking down the road some years. We no longer have to look down the road, we gotta look today.
So capabilities, that also tells you how much you can do, right?
Yes.
And so maybe one of the workshops is devoted to talk about this and small interest loans for 75 years that can help you do what you need to be done right now and pay it back for a long period of time. Transit-oriented design, we can have a discussion just on that. And that is a long discussion, but at least that gives you the idea of you know, what are the preferred funding mechanisms for this? You know, as opposed to maybe just a bot, you know, that just, you know, that just. Just brings more liability to consider the project.
Gerald,
I want to echo, thanks for coming, because
Sure.
we, as a group, should cherish the nice stuff like this. Personally, I cherish whenever somebody comes with a request for considering design criteria. You talked about functionality. But we live in a world right now where aesthetics and form and function. You have to set those priorities. Otherwise, you know what happens? You wind up with an airport that fills up with water when it rains heavy. Or you
that
know,
never happens.
well, no, but that's exactly how it happens.
Yeah.
You make do with what you got in order to save some money, in order to get something done right away. And you don't go through the step that Greg just asked us to put this thing through. I congratulations, thank you. That was.
It's a team effort.
Friggin'
So
it
the
is.
team said, let's talk about this at a different level and bring you all in.
So, and you saw, when I read this, I said, this is gonna be, that picture of that building, it's a beautiful building. Los Angeles would be proud of that. New York City.
this is not.
But
You gotta
Can it
admit,
function?
you gotta admit, for what Fort Lauderdale is and what Fort Lauderdale wants to be. The current city hall, the one that's, well, been negated now. Is about 2 steps up from a tent.
yes, I agree with that.
Oh, the brutalist of the world would not agree.
Right.
Well, the other side of that coin is, yeah, there are people saying that, hey, what's wrong with the building across the street?
Yeah, no, you know, if you could even say, if you were architecturally inclined, that you need a building with a Robert Venturi front, which is like the statement, and then behind it, you want a Class A office building. That's all you want. That's the cheapest thing you can do, not cheap. That's the most efficient thing you could do and still have a presence, you know, the iconic presence of the building. All of this comes later. All of that comes much
We
later.
can't get into that today.
No.
No, but it would be a fun thing to work on.
Yeah, it certainly would be a fun project.
And Mr. City Manager, and I forgot to say thank you for coming.
Oh, our pleasure.
I also want to tell you, in their presence, these are beautiful people.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you, I
That's you. You're the beautiful people.
I enjoy working with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
They never shun a question.
And again, their staff is ready to do whatever it is, the wish of the commission, but again, this helps channel the conversation so that when they see this, like, this is how that check, no, okay, then go back
Mhm.
and help shape the future.
Okay, so let's talk practical. Let's
Yep.
be very practical here. I never go into a workshop without some document in front of me, because that's just crazy. You have to give people something to react to if you're gonna have a workshop with them. So what would you suggest would be workshop number one? What document, what parameters, what would we provide to the public? Hopefully you're gonna do a web page so that people can go and see it. So that when we call everybody to come to this workshop, hopefully we will have a facilitator so that none of us have to get up there and do this like we did when we did those workshops. We all, you know, had to do it. We didn't have any facilitation, but a little professional work on that would be good. So what are your thoughts on what would be the first thing that we would want to talk about?
So I think,
Let's ask him and then you can chime in.
I think, again, guiding principles, just starting at a very high level, what is the philosophy of what you all think are values that the community needs that are very specific? To Fort Lauderdale, because we can do the halls and we have been those guiding principles, give you an idea, we can give you documents on that so that you all can be briefed, and put them available on our website to download and read. And you may come and say, you know, that makes sense, inclusivity, mobility, accessibility,
Functionality.
functional, what are those guiding principles, okay? This is what any proposal, any project must have in order for this to be a successful project. For setting criteria so that we can validate quality at the end. So that would be the first thing. I would say in this conversation, we could have financing as one, that can take a whole level of discussion, okay? To look at that and say, you know what, I think it would be better to do it this way. Another one can be procurement mechanisms, right? There are different ones, there are pros and cons of each. And I'll tell you that design bid build, right, it's very common. For a large scale project like this, I mean, there's important safe factors that we need to put into it so that we don't come out like what happened right now with the police department headquarters, where we thought it was 75, we put it out to vote, we got 100, and then the bill is right now at 140. And so
Going up.
and so we're controlling those costs as much as we can. But what I can tell you is that sometimes, it's important to define the period of procurement, the period of performance. And we can talk all about that. I mean, that's a large discussion, right? Again, these are some other topics of what it can have, and we can give you, maybe you all can look at the topics, maybe next time and say, yes, this is gonna be our program for delivering the workshops. I can bring to you maybe some facilitators for you all to consider. And then that way we develop a program together that says, this is how we're gonna, define that.
Okay, we're gonna get out to workshop number 1. And everybody in the audience is gonna say, well, I want it here, or I want it there. They're not gonna say funding and P3, and they're not gonna focus on those things. What people focus on they're not gonna play our game the way we want them to play. It's like a wild card. When you go out to the public, it's like a wild card. So you have to be really, really, in my experience, really, really structured. Tonight, we are going to discuss the following. This is the agenda that we're going to be discussing tonight. And then at the end, anybody wants to do a little free thoughts, add a little something, happy. So I vote for very, very structured and facilitated discussions.
Professionally.
Professionally facilitated.
Facilitated.
So we can certainly hire a professional facilitator that will do the research, will provide the information, publish it, make sure that you have an agenda and everything beforehand, so that when we come in, there's
Right.
open forum.
We almost don't even need to be up on a dais.
No,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it might give it a little bit of, oomph if we're sitting up on the front and the facilitator's doing it, but we could actually be in the audience, so that it's just, we're taking
Just need a
input.
whiteboard. Start.
whiteboard, dots.
Yeah, really. Doesn't have to
City
be, we
has
don't
to
just
know-
put a push on this,
The city has to know what they want, what parameters, what range do they want, city hall.
Yeah.
And not say that it's gonna be spread out like the one example, but that may be the end limits. And then and then of course the other is concentrated with everything in like the previous city
Right.
hall. So somewhere in between is going to be the optimum city hall in the future.
I think the 2 examples you just gave, the Miami example of
City of
dispersal, city of Miami dispersal versus county.
Yeah.
Everything's in one place.
Right.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. There's no other ranges. That's it. So if we constrain the discussion to, here's an example of this and here's an example of that. Now, let's talk about what we want. What do we think is important? Or you in the audience, what do you think is important? Do you prefer this? Do you prefer that? Why do you prefer what you prefer?
They may say neither. We don't want everything, or we don't want it all spread. We
Well,
want
there's
somewhere
nothing
in between.
else. Oh, yeah, there's in between, but there's nothing else on the ends of the perimeter. It's either
Right.
all in one place
Right,
or decentralized. That's it. That's it.
but not.
Do you see anything else? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, there's different flavors.
Can't be
Absolutely.
all online. I mean, it's got to be a physical presence someplace, right?
Right.
But there's various degrees of decentralization.
Absolutely.
So-
In between. Yeah, I frankly love the Miami thing. I think every district should have an office,
Satellite office.
a satellite. Absolutely.
But the
Absolutely.
city- the cities may,
Not not necessarily full-time, but you know, being there. But you know, one of the things I find that is so disheartening to communities is we have to go out and we have to find places to meet.
Yeah.
Places to meet up, very good. I mean, I do this as a civic association president. You know, you gotta go beg for a place.
Let's go back a couple of slides.
Well,
So
that's
that's,
one of the things, a space for community engagement.
it's again, it's
There
looking
it is,
at
neighbor to
neighbor to
neighbor.
neighbor. How do we make sure that we have enough space, parking, entrance, so that when you go in, the experience is.
But the city should really have their objective. I mean, they know their various departments or divisions. And they know which ones they want to consolidate in the city hall.
So what I can tell you is that from prior plans and discussion and what was going to happen with the Broward County and City Joint Government Center. We have those spacing plans. The idea was to break all out the internet, and it was a beautiful thing. Just that the governance of the building between the city and the county, that was something very complex. And at the end, it never, and yes,
Mhm. But clearly, you've had discussion, not clearly, I'm assuming, that there were already ongoing discussions with the various departments.
yes.
I mean, what would you like, Alan? Would you like everybody all in one place? If it's important for you as I'm
No, but
He doesn't have it now.
we have a very,
Right.
we know exactly what we want out of this for our department and how we operate. And which other departments we want to be close by and which ones we don't need. That's important to us in our efficiency.
So this whole programming thing, you probably practically have it already down. And we don't want to mess with that. That's not.
Yeah, that's an that's design allocation and this is more philosophical. And I'm gonna tell you, when you start, when you've seen at the beginning of prior meetings, the mayor goes, I have this correction and this correction. By the way, this one's gonna be taken out of the agenda. Those are errors.
Mm,
We've had a lot of errors because of different things, but
in the wrong spot, this guy doesn't
because-
talk to that guy.
because since the flood, we haven't had the ability to all meet together.
Very important.
There are people making the best of it from their homes. And while maybe some people may say that's ideal, but you gotta understand, people have families, dogs. They may not
Yeah,
have the
absolutely.
space, the optimal space. So offering a place that they can operate of is very important as an employer. So I'll tell you that, you know, like Alan said, having everyone together, there's value in that.
Closeness and you're more efficient. But
Yes.
it might be good just to ask various directors
I'm
and
sure they've
folks
done that.
around there to find out, from your perspective, from your experience with your people, what would work better for you? And Alan just responded as an example, that he wants, you know, he may like to have, the licensing people close, or he may have whatever closer to him, and other may not come into his interplay so that he doesn't, you know, but for him to function, he needs certain components in there. That make it more efficient.
And also is answering these questions, is bringing that element in and helping us shape our decisions, how we respond as well.
Well, look at the buildings department. You know, the whole buildings department is completely detached from City Hall.
And that works.
It works. I mean,
It's not a problem.
there are people who say it doesn't work, but that's a whole nother
It
discussion.
works.
But it works from the public's perspective. You're gonna go to a DRC meeting, you don't need to go downtown, especially with technology. With everything's up on the screens anyway. So there's no point in spending downtown money on these types of functions that can just as easily be someplace else. This was the discussion they had about Kaplan and should we pay up downtown prices and when we could do Kaplan. There's a lot of validity to that discussion.
Right.
Yes, James.
And just to share this with everyone, I was over at Traffic and Mobility, which is a completely separate little building. And I said that this was a year ago, and I said to them, well, how do you like this? You're He's kind of separate from everyone. They said, "Oh, we love it." So, no names, of course, but there, you know, it was like, they didn't want to be involved. in
Parks
close
Department
calls.
doesn't want to be downtown. They're very happy in their little buildings all around.
Right.
So,
And again, that's, Parks has a different focus, right? Their focus,
much different than that.
you know, you know, when I look
Fire
at
departments all over the place.
what Allen has to do, he has $200 million worth of stormwater. Okay. And then, you know, he has to coordinate, integrate, plan, risk manage, all those things. And right now they're doing it online.
Hmm.
And we
God
need to,
bless
we
you.
need to get them back on, in the office very soon. And so, you know, looking at how he has to deliver these things, which if he doesn't have the right setting, then his team can't deliver so that we can be resilient. So it all has an interplay, you know, so we want to make sure they have tools, equipment, focus areas,
You know,
operating effectively.
if you speaking conceptually, you could conceptually have every department separately someplace else. Fully functional, separate places, as long as the IT people can tie them together with technology. So that if you need to talk to the lawyer, you don't need to be near the lawyer. All you need is a Zoom with the lawyer and say, this is what we're doing, okay? Yes, no, what? So, I mean, it's conceptually so many different methodologies.
There's so many topics to talk about.
Right, so we gotta slim this talk down, especially when you go out, we can have
So,
free
the last
ranging
one.
discussions here because it's just us. But if
Right.
you go out to the public and you try and do this, we'll never get out of there that night.
So my question to you is, these are just examples.
Okay,
What other main topics? I've listed procurement. I've listed financing capabilities.
I'd like to take this. I mean, are you looking for us to make a decision?
No, just
Okay.
what would be the major topics that you would like to host? And again, this doesn't have to be one or bottom one. If you would like to set up, maybe you wanna do 2 topics in 2 weeks or 2 topics a week. We can do back to back. We can,
we can't really do any of that until we have some person who's putting this together.
of course,
Because if we could make a lot of decisions here, but you need a person, you need a human person who's well skilled in this and can pace this out. And you're gonna have to find places too, we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
That's how, speaking of that, the interim plan, the one about getting us all together in the building next door, okay, how's that going? Is there gonna be a room there where we could do this? Wherever you're gonna,
110.
110, aren't you all going over to 110?
1 East.
1 East, 1
Yeah,
East.
we're,
Oh, 1
we're,
East.
1 East. We're bringing forward,
I like going there.
August 22, we're bringing up Poland. So that the.
So will there be a space there? I wanna do this at Parker. Parker is the one.
No, I know, they have actually a very beautiful room. It's bigger than this, that has a very nice setting.
So we could do it there. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and if not, we can also borrow other rooms, like the DDA has a very, very good room.
I've never been there.
We wanna have rooms that inspire us to think, to ideate.
That would be nice.
Yeah, and like this is good for the sparking ideas, so we'll find some nice places.
Okay. All right, I think this is the, yeah.
Jeff, when all of this is taking place, and being a marketing person, myself, we developed an in-reach program, and most people say Western Will, but it's in-reach. If we have this meeting place downtown, you have to encourage people to come. And your attendance is going to be less than if you in reach to get. I mean, what we did in our letter, we did in reach because we went to where they were instead of bringing them to where we were, you know. We said, I'm not going downtown. All that traffic in the afternoon, I'm staying home. But if you have Have this because we got, because right now people are complaining, you know, we raise the water rates and they hear about all the money they borrow and they know we gotta pay it back. And to say, okay, here's another one, you also got to pay for. So our job is going to be sell the building and then sell the cost of the building.
So I'll tell you that one discussion on that is, let's say we talk about financing. One of the subtopics would be, what are we paying today for rent?
Mhm.
And then how do we consolidate that in one spot?
Yeah, and that's a document that needs to be produced by somebody, put on the webpage, so that normal human beings can go, oh yeah, it's costing us this now, it's gonna cost. You can't do that in a public meeting. You have to have that all information all there, so people have 2 weeks to look at it, so that they can have an intelligent discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Greg, do we hear any more, is there a decision made on insurance? Right?
No, we're still finalizing all those aspects, but. Where we get everything whole brand.
Understood, but
Seed money.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, you know, that's another document that has to be produced.
Yeah.
We're anticipating this much from insurance.
Yeah.
We could possibly get grants under the mobility of this much, you know,
Financing that.
infrastructure bill from the state. I don't think we qualify for any of that, but you know, that has to be a document.
Yeah,
So that then we can have an intelligent discussion and not have somebody throw something out of the meeting and then all of a sudden the meeting is about something that's not possible.
right.
So a lot of groundwork has to go into before we get to any kind of public. And then we have to do our part to get people there. I mean, look at the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civics. Maybe what you do is you're gonna come and make a presentation at the council and sell, you know.
maybe we make a presentation.
Or we make a presentation. Somebody's got to make a presentation and sell everybody to go home and talk to their civic associations and tell them
Right.
this is happening. And you know, when you mentioned our work a couple of years ago, when we took it out to everybody.
Yes.
Okay, we didn't have the internet then. We didn't have hybrid. And I think that my experience now with hybrid meetings is people would just be happy to sit home
Yeah.
and watch it. Okay, so if we could put on a good show in a nice room with a good agenda, good discussion with a lot of people coming and going, everybody else at home looks at it, I think we're good.
I agree with you. I just wanna, make sure that we are reaching the people with the information that they need in order to back the program. That's
Right.
what
And I think that the example of the water treatment plant was very good because we had those public meetings. And a lot of people called in to those meetings on the water treatment plant.
The phone.
The phone one.
Yeah.
That was really good. So you could reasonably said you spoke to 300 people. And those 300 people maybe talked to 2 of their neighbors. And by the time you did that, everybody was sort of kind of chill by the time we got there. Not happy, but chill. That's the best you can hope for.
Yep.
All right, does anybody have any more questions? Yes,
Well,
James?
I'm sorry,
No, go. Time.
no disrespect, but so office that's kind of focused on this, have been tasked with, like Marilyn's talking about, oh, we'll need this document or that document. I mean, is there,
So
do you
I
have
wanna
a
say
view?
that we haven't fully defined that. This has been something that many people have had their hands on. We can define that soon. And I think you've given me enough feedback so I can formulate that. And also propose some consultants that can also take the lead on bringing this information together. What I want to say, Chair, is that, you know, if you would like, maybe, you know, I'll send you this presentation along with other notes that I made.
Mhm, Sure.
So that
That'd be
way,
Everybody.
you can talk about that if you'd like at the next,
The next meeting. Well, I'm hoping that at the next meeting, we will have from you some greater structure about how this is gonna be in your anticipated time frame, and then we can work into that with you. Because if we don't actually take a step we'll be 3 months still talking. So we really need at the next meeting a document. Here's what you think we need to do, here's how we're gonna do it, this is the, and if we change it, if we massage it, that's fine, but we need something to work from. Yes,
Maybe we can take
Right.
advantage of the workshop meeting this coming later this month and try to get some input back from the mayor and the commissioners on how they, from their perspective, what they're looking for, what they think is important. That may help close the.
So what I could do is I'll write a memo to the commission, let them know what I spoke to you about
good.
and the importance of bringing them in, how we feel. That way, when they come up and they talk about city hall visioning,
Mhm.
everyone's on the same page.
Can we be reasonably confident that this will never see the light of day? I don't like the way.
Focus on this.
No, but I'm saying, it's not gonna be like, we're gonna show up there one day and they're gonna say, oh yeah, let's accept this P
We're not
three and get the
talking about
process
this.
started.
This is crap.
This was just
I just stated what I have. That's what I had, but
But I'm told by the council's office that you are the person who makes the decision, the city manager is the person who makes the decision about whether or not to accept a P three.
no,
That's
that's
what
the
he told me.
commission.
He told me,
So,
eventually it's the commission, but you have the discretion to say no. Did you know that?
I gotta find out
I'll
about
send you
that,
that memo.
but I know we took a check.
Yeah, you have to send the money back if
I
you
gotta
say
send the
no.
money back and so far I haven't received direction on bringing this forward.
Okay, because that would be very disheartening. All right, but whatever. Let's proceed in this manner. We'll do our duty here. Any other questions about this particular thing? All right, thank you, Mr. City Manager,
Thank you.
being here.
Did we pay for coming here today?
Of course, it's my pleasure. Believe me, I wish I could be here, but I have other meetings back at town.
Good.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay,
I think it's great hints.
yes, you do.
All right.
Okay, so we did number one, discussion with the city manager. We went over the CIP budget. We talked about the budget. And we may have some concerns for the commission. Now let's get on to we did number 4, which is the update on the funding and progress of the water treatment plant. So we don't have to go with it, but that just leaves a discussion about the upcoming joint workshop with the city commission. Now, we didn't request this workshop. I did not request a meeting. I was informed by the city manager that the city commission wanted to have a joint workshop with us. So here we go. They asked us and we're going. What would you like to talk to them about? Aside from, let's get this discussion going about recommendation for the city hall. A couple of budget issues, which I know I want to bring up about the budget, and everybody else may have other issues. Yeah, I mean, I think the question about our longevity is central. Am I correct? We're only good until March of next year?
Yeah, my knowledge.
Is that the 3 years is up March of next year?
I think it was.
It was 3 years, right?
Two.
2,
24, March 24.
okay, well,
We're there.
there you go. We've got to talk to this is, we're happy to do this for you, but if you want a task force to work on this, then you have to have a task force. So we should bring that discussion up, because I don't want to get to February and happen what happened the last time. It was the last day of the last meeting of the last vote to get it going. And then, because people have to make plans, you can't ask people to volunteer to be on these boards if, you don't know till the last minute if you're gonna commit another 2 years.
As far as the workshop goes, perfect place to put that on there, we can ask them, based on.
Start thinking about this, guys.
What are we, where are we, how far do is our life
Mhm.
in this position? Because
Right.
if we go, then it's a whole new group then, or not everybody, but. I mean, those folks that,
That's all.
I think getting clarification right off from the city commission regarding the longevity of the task force is very important. But I'm a little bit, and I appreciate that they want to have this workshop. Excuse me, but I'd say it's pretty vague here, so it would be nice if we can get a little bit more information from the city commission ahead of time. And I don't know if Greg would be the go-between for that for us, but I think I don't want to walk in and then like, they want to start asking us questions about, well, how do you what design do you want? Or do you want all the departments together? We're not prepared to have those discussions yet. We don't have the information.
Mhm. Well, putting the information together in a form that, makes sense and is easily digestible by the general public and leads to the conclusion that you need to, because they want us to, i.e. these are the guiding principles, that takes a lot of work. That you just can't open-ended go and sit down with, the commission and say, well, this is what we're gonna do. Because then we'll just get, everybody's opinion. It will be
And so-
illuminating what their opinions are. It
I
will be
think probably
illuminating.
know already,
Mhm.
don't we, on some of them? But when we did the workshop with the water treatment plant, we were prepared. We knew, we had had all of our discussions. We went in ready to go and talk to them about that stuff.
That's true. And it was all written down and then we
Yeah.
all, and this won't be that kind of a meeting. This will be.
Well, then what do
We
we,
made
to me, a
requests.
workshop is you work on something, you have an end product.
They invited us.
Okay.
I'm just, they invited us.
That's really not the question. The question is for what?
For what? I'm
That's the
assuming that we
question.
will get an
That's the
agenda. When the agendas come up, there will
Well,
be an
now,
agenda.
now, I'm colleague from Boston.
Mhm.
They're
How
the
do you
ones
want me
in
to do with
control,
Yeah.
they're the ones in control of this committee.
Yes, they are.
So they need to direct us what they want from us. And we can either say, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't, because of the fact that you have a consultant that does that kind of
Mhm.
knows. Wouldn't put myself on a position of trying to come up with a structural design for the new city hall.
Oh, hell no.
You couldn't do it.
That's,
It's
that's,
impossible, because you don't have any of the input. And, we don't know if it's 8 stories or 18 stories.
Right, I mean, I was under the impression we were talking about somewhere around 65,000 square feet. That was a number that was thrown around. Again, just numbers thrown around. It's certainly not 300,000 square feet, which is this thing here. So, if we don't know how big it is that we're talking about, it's very hard.
They need to guide us. That's the long and short of it. They need to tell us, this is what we need from you. And here's the criteria we've decided on as the mayor and the commission. And, let's bounce that off of you and get your thoughts, and then bounce it back and say, hey, we can do this. No, if you do this, then you're gonna have to find other places around. to look
Yeah,
at.
because if we would come up with these principles, we could always come up with buzzwords. It has to be accessible, it has to be functional, it's gotta be integrated, it's gotta be, we could throw all those buzzwords out. And then that could be anything. As long as it meets all those buzzwords, so this is not gonna be easy. This is not gonna be easy. It could be disaster if it's not handled correctly. I mean, I don't wanna be sitting out there, taking flack because it's not an understandable, people-friendly thing. I don't mind taking flack in here because we can talk amongst ourselves. I don't want to go people yelling at me. I'm gonna ask him your question. Yeah, you said, no, you invited us. What is on the agenda? What are we gonna be talking about? I mean, we could make up our own agenda, which we are now. We're making up our own agenda. We're saying, well, the longevity of the committee is one of the items on the agenda.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't want to talk to us about that, but what do they want to talk to us about if they invited us? So I will definitely pursue that with him. Hopefully we'll have that before we get into the room.
I think that would be.
Who's going to be here at that time? Let's talk about, what's the date of this workshop?
22nd.
Is everybody gonna be in town on the 22nd? Yeah,
That's
okay, put a hold on that. Yes, it won't be long. It's not gonna be a 3-hour thing. We're lucky if we We're lucky if we have, unless there's something on the agenda, progress on the water treatment plant.
It's.
That could be what they're asking
It's in
us.
the
That's
middle of
not what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 11:30 usually,
Yeah.
11:30,
Might get a,
yeah. 11:30,
right.
okay. Yeah. Let me
Forgive
second.
the sidebar with Chris, one of the questions that I had, but I don't want to. We break here. Is there any idea about the thing being revenue generating as opposed to just the expenditure? Build enough square feet so you can.
That's what I thought this was originally, that they, it'd be an office building and we rent out space, but I don't know, that's a very good question. You have a big piece of property in the middle of downtown. Do you want to rent out the top five, the bottom 5 floors? I don't know.
Be sure to have the utility building in there so they can use enterprise fund money.
Revenue generated, that's. Mhm. Has anybody
That's a
got
great
revenue
idea. I love
generated?
that. Yeah.
Pay for itself.
Whoever is in there, if they
You're
are
taking
not
it-
general.
You wouldn't
fund,
take
they
much
would
heat
have
from the population.
So that is
Oh.
water and sewer, that is water. If you have any transportation, something there's, we know, fire service.
Should be for like nonprofit space or something like that.
Mostly it's utility billing.
Yeah,
and
makes people feel
public
good.
works that are primarily utilities.
That's a nice idea about the not-for-profits, providing space for the not-for-profits.
That's a.
That's always hard for them to do. And the other things that he was talking about, the amenities that make people happy about a city hall, happy to come. One of the things that I find absolutely wonderful is the art exhibits on the first floor. People talk about it all the time. Did you go to City Hall and see the photographs or the paintings or something? So that kind of a thing. Maybe it's someplace to go and eat. You know, you have a meeting, you grab a sandwich, we'll sit down with the cups. Meet us in the cafeteria, Alan. We need to talk about this and such.
Let's put a Starbucks in.
Yeah, I mean, there's possibilities.
Used to be a restaurant on the 8th floor.
Okay, well,
Tim Hortons is coming.
that
Sorry.
concludes our old business. Public Works update, well, the CIP financial report. This is up and beyond the budget. This is how we're doing on the bond fund projects and the consent order projects, how we're doing on that.
Chris, do you want to talk about the type order?
Yeah.
No, we
Biggest thing
we
is-
must be like 80-90% finished on the first 200 million.
We're talking about which bonds.
The first $200 million for
I believe there.
the water and sewer.
60 million, 70 million, and I don't.
Yeah, last time we were given financials on it, which is why we haven't gone for the next round of bonding, because we have roughly 60 million plus or minus unspent. But our finance team's been looking into that and trying to figure out why there's so much left unspent, because a lot of the projects that are included in are further along than what should be reflected in that spending.
Mhm. So we're not,
Is that good or bad?
Well, it's good from the perspective of if we can. ETV is a terminology, but basically if we can swap the funds that were used out of our existing budgets. To pay these pay applications from the consultants contractors with the bond funds, so you're basically burning the bond money first. And then we spend our money after that, our match money after that. You would clear up your bond capacity for other bonds as well as clear up budget availability for projects that sorely need money in order to continue moving forward. So this is a couple months ago when we're given that last report of 60 or 65 million spent. We've been working on clearing that up.
so we're not going for the second 200 million in FY 24.
So it's supposed to be FY 23.
And now
That's why it's now FY 24.
So we pushed out the next bond to FY 24.
Mhm.
Stormwater bond. FY what?
They were some.
About $88 million of the bonds were obtained. The reason for the lower number than the 200+ million that we were looking for is that we're also finalizing funding through the EPA for low-cost loans, which are cheaper than the bond funds.
Really interesting.
So between grant monies, monies that we have already received through the line of credit that we've been using to do River Oaks and Edgewood, the final bond distribution was about 88 million.
And is that gonna pay off the money we borrowed? Or we're gonna keep that?
So we originally got a $70 million line of credit.
Right.
And of that, we have spent roughly 12 million.
That's all.
You know, and I think one of the things that Chris is telling you is, it's not so much that we haven't spent that money, that money's been encumbered in projects, it's completely allocated, we just haven't finished the projects.
Okay.
So, the money's accounted for in terms of, it's gonna finish the following projects, it's just, we're finishing the project, that haven't been spent, we don't have the invoices. And that's similar to what happened with the line of credit, we picked up $70 million for a line of credit, which is what our expected expenditures were for the first few projects that we're doing under the stormwater master plan. And today we've only spent about 12 million of that.
Okay, but my understanding was we borrowed that 70 million with the anticipation,
We got a line of credit, which
What's
means we
line of
only
credit?
pay for what we actually,
but you're gonna use 70, you say, because they're all encumbered.
we won't have to, we will, again, similar to what Chris is saying, we will swap out bond dollars for the line of credit.
Okay, well, whatever we took in the line of, whatever you encumber in the line of credit,
Will be
has to be
covered by
paid
the
back.
bond.
Okay, that's good, that's good. So we're not going out for another 200 million stormwater in FY 24?
No, the current plan was that we would do this initial stormwater master plan, do the additional design work for the upcoming neighborhoods, and then we would go in for another tranche of stormwater funding somewhere between 26 and 28. But it takes time. People are surprised to find it takes time to spend $209.
Yes.
And so we currently have 2 projects that are underway. We have 2 more that are in bid. Probably by the end of the year, we'll have a 3rd that will be in bid. So 5 of the projects will be either under construction, finishing construction, or out to bid.
Pretty
The
good.
last 2 projects will be about another year out before we bid those out.
But the design work on the next neighborhoods is already funded and being worked on. Worked on.
So there are 2 levels. I'm sorry, thank you. Melrose Manors, they usually have to correct that. Melrose Manors and Riverland Civic Association. That one's under design right now. And Vice Mayor Beasley Pittman is asking us to accelerate that because of the impact of the April storm and previous impact. So we're working very hard to get that one through the design process as quickly as possible. Once we do design, we still have about a year that we have to do finalizing the design and then getting through the permitting process before we can go out for bid. So that will be part of the first 200 million.
Okay, cool.
And also within that, too, additional Olympia, we've got a huge amount of grant funding that also is offsetting the cost of those projects.
Yes, I remember the grant for Dorsey Road then, wasn't it? It's one of those.
Dorsey and Progresso
Okay,
at a
correct.
total of about 34 million. We are currently submitting additional grants to try to pick up additional dollars for projects that have not that we haven't spent previously, that are still within that 200 million. So our expectation is that the grant funding that we've obtained for the projects that we're currently doing should be close to enough money to cover what we expect we're gonna need to do for Melrose Manors, Riverland Civic.
For the extra ones,
For
within
the
the
extra
same.
one. And then you asked, are we working through design for the next set? We are going through the process of doing that procurement. It is not advertised yet, but we are getting our ducks in a row to decide exactly what's gonna be included in that design and then moving that forward.
Great. Good progress.
What are we, besides the stormwater, are we, I would say, behind on our spending with any of the other projects that we are funding? I guess behind on our spending is the correct terminology. I'm not sure.
We would like to have been spending more money on I&I projects. We had some difficulties because we didn't have an active contract in place. We had to go and do a solicitation. We had that contract, but actually, Will Powers back here is senior project manager who is putting forward the I&I effort. So we expect a lot of those dollars will start getting expended very soon. So that's one area that we have money that is the first $200 million water, wastewater program that we need to spend, and we have a plan to do that. The next tranche, the $200 million tranche of water and wastewater is gonna be a 2024 bond. And we have already solicited out, well, put out bids for it's about $90 million of that work. So as soon as we get into 2024, we will award those contracts and start spending money. And finance will do some swapping around to spend money first before we spend that.
Is that all those projects that we talked about previously? That all that money that's in the budget for Lohmeyer and other things like that? Is that the money we're talking about?
The ones that you were specifically asked for there was, I believe in the 496. Oh, no, sorry.
There's a lot of money that's being asked for the Lohmeyer treatment plant.
Yeah, that is in 491, which is the central regional fund. That, a lot of that
Yeah.
is, 491 is the 2017 bond.
Okay. All right. So we're spending a lot of money, but we're getting a lot of work done.
Yes.
That's good. All right. Well, that's oh, water and sewer breaks, reports and mapping. Public Works. There was a water disruption on Grand Avenue over the weekend. Somebody on the bridge, the 17th Street Bridge, shut off the water. And 500 people are walking around outside their building looking for water. It was amazing to me. It was like lost children walking around the street looking for water. Has there been any unusual? That was whatever that was. Have there been any unusual breaks that we would see in the reports that we look at it?
The other one that was in there was that very similar one. We had a contractor who poured through one of the fourth mains down near Harbor Isles area, and we had to do some repairs. It did not impact the residents of that area, but we were anchoring for about 24 hours while we were doing the repairs.
Okay.
And that was right at the end of the month.
So we're not in that situation where every week we have a break, we have to worry.
And again, I wouldn't call that a break as much.
So
as
an accident.
Contractor made an error.
All right, well, that puts us into item number 4, general discussion and comments, committee members. Anybody want to bring up anything or for general comments? I will say that I went to a very good workshop that was sponsored by the Broward Planners called Resiliency, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, or some catchy name like that. And it was a discussion about high-level planning at the county, implementation at the city. That was our, what's his name? Stefan, yeah, what, very good. You did a really good job. And then we had a local activist, Susie Bailey, was talking about what was happening with residential people and what they were doing. So it was a very good presentation. At that presentation, Dr. Gerardo, who is the planner, what's her title for the
She's
county?
the deputy director of the Resilience Department.
Yes. She gave a very excellent presentation about what's going on at the county level. The subject matter of the program was water. And her part of it was stormwater and flooding and what we can expect and what the county is doing. They're doing a comprehensive water. I forget what the name of it was. Her presentation, what the county is doing in terms of when they review projects, okay? And they only get to review projects, as I understand it, if it involves a comprehensive plan amendment. So when there's a comprehensive plan amendment submitted to them, they review the project that is the subject of the comprehensive plan amendment. And they review it from the perspective, not like we review it, is there water available and is sewer capacity available? They leave that to you all, okay, us, the local level. But they review it from the perspective of flooding and issues related to dealing with flooding. And anyway, and I asked in terms of reviewing development from the perspective of flooding and water management. So if you all are interested, she'd be very happy to come. We've corresponded with her and give us the presentation about the county's comprehensive. Do you remember what the name of that plan is? The county's work. Working on a comprehensive.
Working on a lot of things. One of the things you're doing is.
She's happy to come and we can have her at our September meeting if that's your pleasure. I can make that arrangement. Would that be something you'd be interested in? Okay, I'll make the call. All right, that's the only thing I had for general discussion. Everybody else? Yes.
Thanks. The question on the Himmershey dredge project,
Mhm.
what kind of dredging are they doing there? Is that with an excavator? Is that suction dredging? How do we evaluate?
I don't think we've received their methodology that they're going to use. I would assume.
Every dredging project.
Oh, the Himmershey, I'm sorry.
Last week,
Yeah,
and it was excavation. They were using claw to do the
yeah,
work.
yeah.
They had permission to remove roughly 2,000 cubic yards of material. We are waiting for the final survey to determine exactly how much they were able to remove.
Okay. Were there any other methods of dredging that were considered other than using an excavator?
Yeah, similar to the work we did on Tarpon.
Right.
When we were doing Tarpon, we started with a suction dredging with a specialty watering activity. That's something we were trying to do at Tarpon, and in the end, we had to go to excavator because it wasn't moving quickly enough and they weren't being successful in being able to remove the material in a timely manner. So when Himmershey was put out, the thought process was it's a relatively small amount of material, excavation will work fine, turbidity. Barriers work.
Incident with the dredge project, but I had, several residents from that area calling me, taking pictures and sending me pictures of all sorts of dead wildlife, a lot of dead ducks.
Yeah,
I
so
don't
we
know what
did
happened.
get that complaint,
Yeah,
and this time of year especially, because we have been experiencing extreme heat in this area. While it's possible that the disruption of the habitat may have caused an additional stress on that wildlife, it's very common, especially for Muscovies, during this time of year to die from botulism. People put out food, it's hot, it ferments, it gets rancid, and the ducks eat it and they die. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to be able to do a cause and effect based on what happened with that particular wildlife. Now
they're a invasive species anyway, aren't they?
they are.
Yeah. And then my last question is on when we're doing projects and we have a runoff event into the waterways, my most recent recollection that was very, very significant was the Suntex project, the Los Olas Marina. I don't know if everybody remembers the amount of runoff that came off of that project at some point. I think there was a pipe that burst or, there was something that happened. But my question is what's the response, but moreover, the responsibility and the accountability of the contractor when you have an event like that happen? When you have an event like that happens, what's the accountability on the contractor to be responsible for that?
I think you can take the example of something that happened in River Oaks where we had a significant turbidity discharge
Yeah.
associated with the work we did, the stormwater there. All of our contracts make it very clear that the contractor is responsible for meeting all of the environmental and other permit requirements, and that any enforcement action that may be taken will be their responsibility. That doesn't mean that the enforcement agencies don't also come after the city. But as the primary contractor, they are taking the responsibility of any illegal or inappropriate discharge.
And who does a resident report incidences to? Is it to the city? Is it to other agencies or?
If you are concerned about a conflict of interest, report it to Broward County, because most of our permits that are associated with those sorts of things are from Broward County or delegated from the state to Broward County. Although certain projects also have city permits primarily related to the building side of things, but the environmental permits for any of our type of projects are primarily through Broward County.
Okay, well, thank you.
And I'll say that our regulatory folks on DSD inspectors have no problem with writing us emails saying about any problems that they find so that our project managers can get them under control.
And we also have our own internal environmental inspectors who will go out and if they see a violation, they do two things. They warn the project manager that there's a violation that's occurring and for that project manager to go talk to their contractor. And then they also usually call Broward County and report it to them as well.
But the situation that you explained just a little while ago, where a contractor hit a force main and there was a spill. Does he have to pay for that? I mean, did he pay for the pumping and did he pay for the cleanup?
They will be charged for it.
They will be charged. Okay.
And that wasn't our contractor.
No, that was a
an
private.
independent.
That was my question. If it's a private contractor, they don't have a contract with us. You know, they're responsible and they pay.
Yes,
Who determines how much they pay?
our folks, they know how many who worked on it, and then vehicles and figure out the marketing cost.
Okay. Was there
Apologies
a
on
bill?
the dredging, by the way, we have another one that's underway, so.
But where did that?
Osceola.
Okay. Well, that is it, yeah.
Gerald had his hand up. Gerald?
Just a couple of things. What's the latest on how to get across the new river, the bridge tunnel? So.
Good question.
I haven't heard anything.
That's dead. Yeah, I have not heard anything.
Last meeting I was in on that was probably about at least 4 months ago, and I've been given no update since. I know that they did hire a company to further refine the DOT's previous studies. And I was involved in a little bit of that primary procurement process, but I've heard nothing since.
Actually, that's a very good question. We put money into that contract. We split the cost of that contract with Broward County. Can we get an update on that at our next meeting? Because a consultant was hired, money is being spent.
I'm sure Ben Rogers would love to come and talk about that.
Well, then let us have Ben Rogers talk about it.
I will pass
Good
on.
catch.
One of my other hobbies is staying in tune with the marine industry. And what I had heard, it's a rumor at this point, that's why I asked for an update, the infrastructure committee should know. Is that the alternatives were a tunnel, 26, 55, and 80-foot bridges.
Mhm.
And the most recent discussion that I heard was that they're considering the 26-foot bridge. Might as well not do anything.
Yeah, definitely, that would
That's
be
fine.
very helpful.
And they were also leading towards between that one and the mid-height bridge, which would reduce bridge openings, but to your point, not as significant as we would
Well,
like.
we need an update.
The other one is, the topic that come up when we're talking about the water treatment plant is the removal of polyfluoral compounds.
Feedbacks.
It is. It has become widely known. As a matter of fact, one of the centers of concentration is up in Stewart, Florida. They're the ones that sued 3M.
I remember, I was reading about that. Yeah.
Fort Pierce, so we gotta keep a mind's eye towards making sure that whatever we put in the new plant is effective at doing it.
Well, as you know, the federal government just came out with draft rules for it, which is, I believe, 3,000 or 4,000 pages worth of specifics. The company is looking at those specifically in the design of it. They did testing out the wells to have a better idea of what the quality of water is coming out. And so they're evaluating all that now, so that when we basically, if they have to make some modifications to it, that we do that now while we're still working on design and not dealing with it in construction.
Later on.
I remember years ago in Miami, they used to have their fire department practice with the foam.
Oh, yeah, that's
extinguishing Out there, so
Yeah,
little did we know then, and
Well,
now that we
you
know.
learn things as you go along.
But the standard is so low. I think the EPA's proposed standard is lower than anybody anticipated it would be.
That's
It's like
scary.
4 parts per trillion.
Yeah, I'm gonna measure that.
You'll never get that out.
And again, that's one of the challenges is that it is near the limit of detection. So it's very hard to manage expectations and meet standards when when you're measuring devices can just barely measure that and not to a high degree of accuracy at that level.
Are you anticipating that during the rulemaking process that might be amended to a more reasonable standard? Or is that over?
From what my understanding is, a lot of people have great concerns with it, and the EPA has said, thank you very much for your feedback, but there is no discussion about changing it.
Wow.
And anybody is heard.
Okay, well,
Again, the rule has not been finalized yet, and now it looks like it won't be until probably February or March of 2024 before the rule will be put in place. And then there'll be several years for people to come into compliance with it, because it affects every single water system in the country.
wow.
And
That's,
every airport.
and every fire department. They can't use foam anymore? We just bought a foam truck. I was at the grand opening of the new foam truck.
Recycle back.
All right. I also noted in the budget, speaking about water, there's money for copper detection. Yes, so,
EPA passed the lead and copper rule a year and a half ago.
right,
And we have 3 or 4 years in order to evaluate all of the systems in the city, determine where they are, and then based on that, we're about to come up with a mitigation strategy basically to remove any lead or copper pipes. So what was funded was, the first part was the study to figure out if we have anything in place, which should take about a year to complete.
There's gonna be, pipes on city property, or are you gonna do my house too?
We are not touching your house.
But how about all those copper water pipes with lead solder?
For you, they're okay, for everybody else, though.
okay. Could I just ask you one favor? I was very interested in this project management consultant project for the INI projects. Can we get some information about that? Is it, I'm sure there was a,
Like you mean like the documents or?
I mean, I can give you a copy of the RFQ that went out.
Yes, that would be-
That's all we really have right now.
that'd be fine, just to get a handle on that, because I always say that every dollar you throw down the drain is the best money you spent here because you fixing the pipes, yeah. Okay, James,
I just needed some education. We're talking about dredging. You talked about the two different kinds, excavation and suction. Is there pros and cons of those, or I'm not familiar?
So excavation literally uses a claw to pick up sediment off the bottom. It's a sledgehammer approach.
Tends to
You're-
disperse.
You're grabbing what you can grab. You have an estimate of how much you're supposed to take out of each location. You don't know exactly what you're picking up with every bucket. But it's quick. It does cause a lot of turbidity, but you have turbidity booms on either side of the project area to control that. And dewatering is one of the biggest challenges with either technique is you've got to get the water a chance to get out of the sediments, otherwise your disposal costs are crazy. With the suction dredge, what we were doing specifically in Tarpon is we were pulling water up using a hose, a little more controlled, smaller locations that are picking up throughout the area. You can pinpoint a little better where you're picking stuff up. It then pushes the water and the dredge material through a bag, which helps dewater it, but it takes time for water to come out of that bag without letting all the sediments out. It's a much slower process. Tends to create less turbidity, but it's again slower, but a little more refined in terms of pinpoint targeting where you're thinking.
And
So what goes into-
less effectiveness if you have a lot of boulders or big obstructions.
Okay, I pick them up.
It's better for sandy bottoms and fines.
Okay.
so what,
So the decision to go with one or the other, you have some kind of criteria or process you review when you make a decision then? Okay.
We had 3 dredging projects that were associated with our 2019-2020 sanitary sewer. One was at Georgia England, one was at the Tarpon, and the other one was at Himmershey. Himmershey was the last. We really used what we learned from the other 2 projects to make some decisions about.
So let me ask you a question. When are we gonna know if this was successful, if the dredging was successful in terms of improving the water quality?
Right, and again, the performance metrics for this was removing the sediments.
Okay,
All of the work, all the environmental work that was done beforehand demonstrated that the sediments were not contributing to water quality impacts in those waterways. But we were asked to remove whatever sediments and solids came into those waterways. A great example is that at Tarpon, we were dewatering out of it. So a lot of what ended up in the Tarpon River was the soil from the pit, not solids from the effluent. So our job at that point in our performance metric was the removal of the materials.
X number of pounds or square feet or whatever.
Cubic yards, right? So in terms of, is it gonna make a difference to the water quality? Our general expectation is that yes, it will make a difference over time. And we've been having really good water quality reports even during the dredging from the Hemorrhaging Canal. So.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Do we have any public people on the line that we need to address? 4:30, we're out of here. Okay, thank you very much. See you on the 22nd, probably at 11:30. Think about what you might want to talk about. Send that information to Vicky. Obviously, you can't send it to me, but if you have some suggestions about what we want to talk about, send them to Vicky, and I'll convey them to the city manager and see if we can solidify this agenda. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
The 22nd is at park, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yes.
It's like a little bit.
All right.